Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Pat's Pulpit pregame preview for the 2016 season. We're here to watch and enjoy the New England Patriots host the New Orleans Saints, and I'm here with my man, Alec Shane. Alec, welcome. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm a little confused right now, Rich. Usually I'm the one that makes the introductions when we do the podcast, but I guess it's video now, and you're way better looking than I am, so it's probably for the best that people see your face before they see mine.
Well, I'm just trying to put our best foot forward for this upcoming season, my face looks like a foot, so I think that's a pretty good start.
Well, my mom always said I have a face born for radio, so I'm sorry to everybody out there that we're on live and we're visible as opposed to our heavenly intonations coming over the radio waves. But you know what? What can you do? We're about to see a much better looking person take the field than Jimmy Garoppolo in a little over an hour or a little under an hour at this point. And, hey, it's an actual game we're talking about, Rich, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, we're not talking practice anymore. It's not practice. So I think it's a good start. I think we can run through the projected inactives for this game right now because the New England Patriots just came out with an announcement that quarterback Tom Brady is not even going to be in the building during this upcoming game. He has been excused to attend a family friend's funeral service or memorial service, so he will not even be in the building. So this is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo's show for the majority of the game. And I'm pretty excited to see how he fares out there. He faced the Saints last preseason. He did exceptionally well. He completed 28 out of 33 passes for 269 yards and a touchdown. He also threw an interception, but that's a pretty impressive stat line. So I'm pretty excited to see how Garoppolo looks this game.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's the big question in everyone's mind is Jimmy Garoppolo coming in here. I know we were talking a little earlier this week in our podcast about Brady getting some reps, then Garoppolo coming in to spell him. But with Brady not even in the building, it's obviously Garoppolo's show from snap number one. The only problem I have, Rich talked about the inactives. Pretty much the entire team is inactive for this game. There are no starting receivers. Chris Hogan is out. Edelman obviously is out. Amendola is out. There's no Gronkowski's not going to play, so Deion Lewis is not going to play. Obviously, Sebastian Vollmer, I believe, is also on the PUP list still. So the guys coming in, starting that first series, really aren't going to be the guys that he's going to be out there with in September against the Cardinals. So I guess the question is, how much weight can we put into this game? I guess as much weight as you can put into a preseason game anyway. But how much weight can you really put into these starters coming out there?
No, that's pretty fair. And Keyshawn Martin probably won't be playing either. But you look at who Garoppolo was playing with last year. It was Chris Harper. He had a great game out there. Jonathan Krause was another one of those names. So Garoppolo's been out there in the prior preseasons without very much talent around him. So even though he'll be throwing to the likes of Aaron Dobson, maybe Martellus Bennett, that's still going to be an upgrade over what he was playing with last preseason. But I agree with you. I'm a little bit concerned just because there are a lot of injuries out there. I'm really crossing my fingers that no one else gets hurt. But, yeah, as you said, Deion Lewis won't be there. DJ Foster won't be there. Donald Brown probably won't be there. And then in addition to Vollmer, they're going to be missing Jonathan Cooper, who is recovering from his foot injury. And then Trey Jackson still hasn't practiced yet this year. So they got a lot of players that are going to be missing time. Who are you going to project to be the starting receivers for Garoppolo tonight?
Starting receivers, interesting. It's one of the things we were talking about earlier in the season, earlier in some couple podcasts. Obviously, I think Aaron Dobson is the guy who's probably going to be number one. And the good news about all these guys on the PUP list are not playing is that it gives us a good chance to see Malcolm Mitchell, the fourth-round pick this year, see what he's capable of. Everyone's super high on this guy. Everyone's really excited to see what he has to offer. So I think that he gets a good chance to get some serious reps with the number ones or as many number ones as are healthy right now. So it's Amendola and Mitchell for me as probably the outside receivers. And then we'll probably get a chance to see Chris Harper in there. Maybe Nate Washington can make a name for himself in a non-vomitory capacity and become like there's always that one guy who shines a preseason. So Nate Washington will probably get out there. Aaron Dobson, Malcolm Mitchell, and Chris Harper are probably my four receivers going out there. And you never know. Maybe Matthew Slater. I'm not sure if he's going to start or not, but maybe he'll get a chance for some reps as receiver as well.
Yeah, no, I'm particularly excited about to see Malcolm Mitchell. I've been high on him since the Patriots drafted him, even before they took him. I was been a big fan of his play for a long time now. He's one of those shorter-ish size receivers. He's like 6 foot, but he plays like he's 6'5". He's got a ridiculous wingspan, and he's been making circus catches all preseason. So I think that he's going to go out there. He's going to adjust. He was one of the favorite targets, along with Aaron Dobson, during a lot of the practices in recent weeks. So I think he's going to take advantage of what he learned from from those practices and apply it to the game. And I do think that the Patriots are going to want to get his feet wet. But another player that I'm very, very interested in watching is DeAndre Carter. He is this guy out of Sacramento State, which, has anyone ever come from there before? He's 5'8". He's a slot receiver, probably one of the most athletic wide receivers in the past decade. Comes with his height, but he's super fast, super quick. He's very, very explosive. He's clearly a slot receiver due to his size, but he has also been one of the favorite targets of Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo. And since Danny Amendola isn't going to be playing tonight, and additionally, everyone kind of knows the writing is on the wall for Amendola in a Patriots uniform at the end of the season. He had to restructure his contract down, so the Patriots wouldn't cut him this year just because he's so expensive and he kind of underproduces what he's earning. We can be honest there. So I do wonder if DeAndre Carter is going to be another practice squad stash and eventually be the replacement next season. So I'm really curious to see if Carter has what it takes, or if he's just going to be another one of those wide receivers that really flashes during the preseasons. The Brian Tims, the Terrence Nunns, those types of players that really do well, and then they just kind of vanish once the regular season comes around.
Yeah, totally. And there's also so many receivers right now fighting for maybe one or two spots that I imagine the coaching staff's going to want to rotate those guys in and out as much as possible, while also balancing getting guys like Aaron Dobson and Malcolm Mitchell, the two of which I think are probably the best chance of seeing meaningful reps in the regular season. You want to give those guys time with Garoppolo so he continues to develop. So I'm very curious to see how the coaching staff balances out the guys that they're probably going to see as starters or at least as final roster players versus roster bubble players. Now they're going to balance those reps out.
No, I agree. And we look at the past games that Garoppolo has played over the past few years, and he always looked at his best when he was throwing to Brian Tims. We remember there was a few of those circus catches when they were playing Washington where he chucked the ball into the end zone, and Brian Tims kind of caught it, did a barrel roll, and the ball popped out, and then he ended up catching it again. They didn't count the score, but it was totally a touchdown. Let's be totally serious here. So I kind of think that Aaron Dobson fits that skill set the best. So I wonder if that's going to help Dobson in the preseason, if it might help him earn a roster spot early on, if he can copy that dynamic relationship that Garoppolo developed with Tims, maybe that will help Dobson eventually win a final roster spot.
Totally. And the thing's interesting this year, especially because there might be a couple of guys on the roster right now that in different years might not make the team. They might get cut in the 75 or 53 stage. But if they have that rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo and he really likes them, they might be worth keeping around for at least the first 4 weeks as he gets his feet wet in the real season. So I think there's a lot of talent on the receivers, and I'm really excited to watch them tonight in a little less than half an hour, a little less than 45 minutes now, which is pretty nice. Let's keep on the offense, Rich, and let's talk about tight ends not named Gronkowski and Bennett. Gronk's definitely not going to start tonight. Bennett might see very limited amount of action. So the backup tight ends that no one's really talking about this offseason will get plenty of chances to catch some passes, throw some blocks, and do all those beautiful things that tight ends do. So we talked a bit on our podcast earlier in the week about the tight ends and who's going to make it, who's not, who's going to fill out the back end of the roster in the tight end position. Who you want to see tonight stand out in the first preseason?
Well, for me particularly, I'm looking at A.J. Derby. He was a late-round pick last year. He spent the entire season on the injured reserve. So I think that he kind of has an advantage because he has more time in the system. Bryce Williams is not going to be playing most likely, so that means that Harbor is really going to be competing with Steven Shue for one of those final spots. Maybe we'll throw James Devlin out there a little bit as well. And then you have to factor in Clay Harbor as well, but he's kind of been banged up, so we don't know how ready or available he'll be. So I think that Derby is going to have the greatest opportunity to flash his ability. I know that he was used in the 2-minute drill with Tom Brady, so I think that the team really likes him a lot. So I'm very curious to see how he performs. So who are you looking at?
For me, I'm glad you mentioned Steven Shue. He was kind of my sleeper guy, sleeper tight end, my Zach Sudfeld, if you will. I think he's got a good blocking ability to him. He's got very good legs. He gets low in his blocks. And I do think that as a blocker, it's your best bet on the Patriots to stick around because obviously Gronk and Bennett are going to be doing most of the catching and touchdown scoring. But you can come in there as like a third tight end / offensive lineman hybrid for jumbo packages and make your name that way, as well as catch a few passes here and there. I think you're going to be in good shape. And again, like we talked about many times, Rich, if you're a new quarterback, running backs, tight ends are your best friend. So this is going to be a really good opportunity for these guys with no Gronk and probably very limited Bennett to show the coaching staff that they are worthy of a spot in the final 53.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going off that note, we can transition to talk a little bit more about the running backs, because I think that's going to be a very, very important position for Garoppolo and the entire offense as a whole. When you have a young quarterback, the offensive coordinator likes to shrink the playbook a little bit. They like to make it a little bit easier, remove the more difficult passes. So I think with Garoppolo at the helm, there's probably going to be a lot of checkdowns. They're going to try and take advantage of the middle of the field. But there's no Dion Lewis and there's no DJ Foster. So I think that James White is going to get a big opportunity tonight to prove that he deserves a spot on this roster. And remember last year, James White was one of the most dynamic receiving backs in the entire league. And that's not hyperbole. Based off of all of the statistics, he was a top 5 receiving back in the league. He took advantage of every single opportunity that he had. His big issue is that he was unable to run the ball, and that was partially because the rest of the offense was decimated, so opposing teams could kind of focus on the run, but also because he just wasn't a strong runner. He was not able to succeed between the tackles, and so I think that this is an opportunity for White to line up with that first-team offensive line. I know that there's no Vollmer, but this will be the best line that he'll get a chance to showcase behind. And if he can prove that he's a very, very good runner, then I think that he's a lock. I think that if he can average, even if it's just like 3.5 yards per carry, it's better than the 2.7 he did last year. So if he can average 3.5 yards per carry, I think that his space on the roster is completely safe.
Yeah, White's one of those guys where the coaching staff, they have these guys that are very high on. You hear all the journalists, all the reporters talk about that they can't say enough about so-and-so. And then we get them on the field, and as fans, we're all like, what did they see in this guy? And that was James White for a while. And then once everyone got hurt last year, he really emerged as a legit receiving threat. But you're right, Rich. He really can't run well. He's not a between the tackles runner. When Blunt went down, they pretty much had no short yardage back and no grounder and pounder. So hopefully he can go in there, and maybe he gained some weight this offseason. Maybe he got stronger. Maybe he's going to be more of a versatile running threat. It's really too bad about DJ Foster not being in tonight. I know you and I are both pretty psyched about him. Hopefully he can bring something to the table, but I guess we have to wait a little bit to see what he's going to be able to do. Hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, he'll be able to come at least get some reps. I'm very excited to see him do some jukes, do some cuts, and whether or not he can pick up the blitz. I think the biggest knock on Foster has always been his blitz pickup. That's a really important part of being a running back in the Patriots system. Someone I'm psyched actually for tonight, the door is open for this guy. I forgot about him until about 2 weeks ago. Tyler Gaffney from the Carolina Panthers. He was on IR. They tried to sneak him on. The Patriots picked him up and then cut him and IR'd him again. Big dude, 6 feet, 220, 225. This will be his 3rd year, I believe, in the system. Hasn't really had a chance due to injuries and due to not being able to see the field because he's hurt. And I think he's a guy that if he's healthy, if he is doing his work in the offseason, if he's really ready to go, he could be a big contributor. And tonight's his night to prove it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because I was thinking about that too. This is his 3rd year in the system. This is the furthest he's made it every single year, and that's kind of crazy to think about. You know, he's been on the team for the past 2 seasons, and he's been on the IR before they've made it this far. So I think that they restructured his contract earlier this offseason to kind of protect the team a little bit more in case he got injured again. But this is a high reward player. You know, he's a former minor league or baseball player. He had some success there. And you know how Bill Belichick loves his multi-sport athletes. And he was like over a 2,000-yard rusher for Stanford. He's a big bruiser guy, very, very athletic. I think that, we know LeGarrette Blount's coming back from his hip injury, and Tyler Gaffney, I think, is going to be a lot better than Joey Iosefa was last year. And, I mean, that's not that difficult. But I think that the Patriots really realized last season that they did not have a good in-between-the-tackles back behind Blount. And they had Brandon Bolden. Once Dion Lewis went down, they had James White. But neither of those guys were strong runners. And so I'm very curious to see if the Patriots want to mitigate some of the risk of another Blount injury with a player like Gaffney, who's a strong runner. And I'm really curious to see how he performs tonight behind whoever is going to take up this offensive line.
Good question, Rich. Who is taking up this offensive line? I know that my boy Joe Thuney is slated to start. I know Brian Stork is dressing. I'm not sure if he'll get any actual rest, but he is going to dress at center. Sebastian Vollmer, we already talked about being on the PUP list. That means Nate Solder, and I believe Trey Jackson's also out. So it's going to be Solder, Thuney, Stork, Shaq Mason, Marcus Cannon. Is that what we're looking at for the offensive line?
That's what I'm thinking. And, so Nate Solder, he missed a practice earlier this week, but no one thinks that it was anything serious. It'd be nice to see him back on the field at left tackle. I agree with you. I think Joe Thuney is going to be that starting left guard. The Patriots over the past week, they've been using Josh Klein a little bit at center to try and improve his versatility. but also because I think the coaching staff really understands the value of finding a player's position and letting them grow there. Instead of last year where they were like, well, maybe Shaq Mason can play left guard, maybe a little bit right guard. They're like, Joe Thuney, focus on being the best left guard that you can be, and we're not going to mess with that. And Josh Klein, we know that you were great last year. You're very, very valuable. We'll try and find you a spot on the line, but we want Thuney at left guard. Shaq Mason was clearly better at the right guard spot than he was at the left side. He looked far more natural in the playoffs. He was the best offensive lineman over those 2 games, and that's kind of, I don't know, it's not a backhanded slap there. The rest of the line was atrocious, but he was a legitimately good offensive lineman in the playoffs, which is more than you could say for his teammates. So I think he found his spot at the right guard spot. The Patriots were using him with the first team offensive line over the past week of practice. So I think those 2 guards are kind of set. And if it's not Brian Stork at center, if it's not David Andrews, it might be Josh Klein. So I think you got those 3 players right there competing for one spot. I don't know if Stork will actually dress up and compete because he has been battling a concussion. I wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots let him rest a little bit longer and he's just there to do mental reps. So I do think that Andrews is going to be the possible leading center. And then, at the right tackle spot, I think it's going to be Marcus Cannon. Word out of Foxborough was that he looked awful during practice against the Saints. So I don't know if anyone's really surprised by that, but we'll find out who's going to be the top backup behind him. It's going to be questionable. They were using Adrian Waddle at left tackle when Solder was out, but perhaps Waddle could be a superior option to Cannon. And then there's also Cameron Fleming. But I do think that the starting lineup is going to look fairly similar to what the Patriots used last year, with the one exception of Joe Thuney being that starting left guard.
That makes sense to me. Now, the question I actually have, obviously in the preseason, it's a time for coaching staffs to experiment with formations and lineups and guys rotating in and out. As we saw last year, rotating offensive linemen in and out has disastrous results. So how much rotation do you think we're going to see in not only this game, but the entire preseason along that offensive line?
Well, I think that the coaching staff will want to have an opportunity to look at the different combinations to see which players mesh well and which ones do not. Dante Scarnecchia, the offensive line coach, came out and said, we're going to find our starting 5 and we're just going to play them. And I think that in order to find that starting 5, they're going to have to do some combinations. But once that's determined for the regular season, they're going to stop it. But I think as we're in the preseason, they're going to start rotating some players in. I think it's going to be primarily on the interior line. I think Solder and Volmer are pretty locked in at your starting tackle spots with Cannon as the top backup option. I think that's pretty set in stone. But within the interior itself, I know that they like Joe Thuney at left guard, but everything else is kind of up in the air. And once Jonathan Cooper returns from his foot injury, maybe once Brian Stork gets healthy again, we could see a rotation at that center and right guard spots with Josh Klein, with David Andrews, and maybe even Ted Karras, this year's 6th round pick, and John Halapio, who's totally crazy. The Patriots signed him back after drafting him a few years ago. He's a guy who went to the University of Florida. I think he had to get stitches on his eyeball, and he finished the game. So he's like one of those crazy people, and I'm really excited to see how he plays. And Belichick actually talked a little bit of how he's grown over the few years. So I think that the rotation that would happen would take place at the center and the right guard spot as the coaching staff tries to figure out, who's going to line up, who's going to be the best options with the different combination. Specifically, I think Thuney is locked in at left guard because over the past 2 years, we've seen how Nate Solder has really struggled with the rotation next to him. But in 2014, once they put Dan Connolly at that left guard spot, he really settled down. So I think they want Solder to develop a rapport with the left guard. So I don't think they're going to fiddle with that spot at all.
I'll tell you where they'll definitely be fiddling a lot is on the other side of that line, the defensive line. I expect to see a lot of different lineups on the defensive line today. Huge injury, potentially disastrous, only mildly disastrous. Rob Ninkovich tore his tricep. Not going to need surgery. 4 to 6 weeks is what I'm hearing. Maybe late September, mid-October, he should be back. However, the door is now open for a lot of edge rushers, the interior guys, a lot of stuff going on the defensive line. Let's talk about that for a little while. Who do you want to see tonight do well?
Well, with Ninkovich out, we know that the top 2 guys are going to be Jabal Sheard and Chris Long on that edge spot. I think that's pretty set. That was the part of the top 3 rotation with Ninkovich that we saw. There might use a little bit more of Shea McClellan as that 3rd spot. I could see them using a 1-for-1 swap with Ninkovich because they are extraordinarily similar players. They're guys that have played at defensive end, outside linebacker, inside linebacker. They have a very similar skill set. Shea McClellan's 7 years younger, something like that, 6 years younger. So I think the Patriots Patriots were preparing to eventually move on from Ninkovich, and they think McClellan could do that. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him out there with that rotation. But the one player that I'm most excited to see would be Trey Flowers. He was a 4th-round pick last year. I think he was the 101st overall. So he's a very good talent. I know whoever likes Pro Football Focus would know that Trey Flowers was their 2nd-rated defensive end in college during his final season, behind Joey Bosa, who's the 3rd overall pick this year. So a lot of the analysts are really, really high on Flowers. They think he brings a lot to the table. He's 6'2", around 260, but he has like an 84-inch wingspan. So he's got the arm length of someone who's like 6'6". It's kind of very obvious when you watch him play, because his arms are like Mr. Stretch, whatever that toy was. So I'm very curious to see how he wins. He plays with a lot of really good leverage. He looked exceptional last preseason. But the big issue that happened is that he had a hand injury against the Packers. He went down, kind of jammed it, and didn't really look that great. And then he also had a shoulder injury. So they're expecting him to be a big impact player. They've been using him on that defensive line, and then they're kind of using him on the inside a little bit as well. So I think that he might be one of the players that leapfrogs Geno Grissom, who's a fellow draft pick last year, late in the 3rd. So I wouldn't be shocked if Flowers jumped Geno Grissom to be that top backup option. And in addition, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Rufus Johnson did the same thing.
I'm glad you brought up Rufus Johnson, because I think another position we haven't talked about a whole lot, besides the kind of the whole way we talked about tight ends and Gronk and Bennett are so securely etched in as the starters. We've also got on the other side Jamie Collins, Dante Hightower etched in as the starters at linebacker, and Shane McClellan might see some time at linebacker as well, depending on the formations the Patriots decides to utilize. But again, after that is a whole lot of shakeup on the kind of back end of the linebacker roster. There's Jonathan Freedy, who is serviceable. He's serviceable. I mean, he's horrible in coverage. He's a pretty good run defender, but he's not the guy. He's big talent drop off between Jamie Collins and Dante Hightower. So I'm looking for a lot of the linebacker depth tonight. And so who do you see getting reps behind Dante and Jamie Collins, and those guys swap out probably midway through the first quarter?
All right, well, so they signed Ramon Humber from the Saints, or Ramon Humber, I guess, from the Saints over in free agency. I think they had been using Rob Ninkovich at that spot earlier in camp, and then McClellan could step in a little bit at that 3rd spot. But I really do think that Freeney is that top 3rd option, and that makes me a little hesitant. But behind him, I'm really curious to see the 2 rookies. I'm a huge fan of both Elandon Roberts and Kamu Grugier-Hill. You know, KGH is kind of more of that safety linebacker hybrid. Belichick admits that he's more of a special teamer at this point in time. He's like 210 pounds. He's freakishly athletic, but if he wants to play linebacker, he might have to add another 20 pounds or so to be successful. Landon Roberts is on the other side of the spectrum. He's just short. He's 5'11". He's like 235 pounds, so he's fine from a weight perspective. But when I watched him in college football, I've been talking about him a lot this offseason. I really don't want to be let down when the the balls start flying. But I think when I watched the University of Houston during draft prep to watch William Jackson III, who was a cornerback, went in the 1st round, whenever I watched this Houston defense, Landon Roberts stood out. And I'm not exaggerating. When I watched him time his blitzes to get into that backfield to either knock down the quarterback or make a play on the running back, he was untouched. His timing was impeccable. He was doing it against some of the best competition that they saw all season. He was consistent and did it every single game. I think that we're going to watch Roberts out there and think to ourselves, this guy can really play. You know, maybe he's like a London Fletcher type. I'm actually talking out of my ear right now. I don't know if London Fletcher's short. I don't know if he's short. I kind of think he is. I might be thinking of a different linebacker. But I wonder if he could have a long career, even though he's a little bit shorter, just because he thrives based off of his instincts and his timings. And those are things that he will have as an advantage over the other guys he's playing with.
You know, Rich, I asked that question specifically so you could go on and wax poetic about your boy, Kamu Grugier-Hill, and you flipped it on me.
I wanted you to do it for me. You
flipped it on me, and the whole thing was a sonnet to Landon Roberts. You threw me for a loop there, Rich, but you know what? I like the versatility. I like the depth you bring to the conversation, and so I'm proud of that. I like it. However, I think we should also talk about the secondary coming in, because obviously secondary is a very big part of any kind of preseason training camp battle. There are a lot of defensive backs on the roster. The starters are set. Logan Ryan, I think, is out today. He's not going to be playing. Malcolm Butler should be in. Everyone's going to be working for a roster spot. Dale Roberts should be back. The second-round pick Cyrus Jones is here. Everybody's happy. Everyone's looking to gain some roster spots. So let's talk about the secondary to close out this preview. Who are the cornerbacks/safeties you're most excited to see?
So I'm really excited to see undrafted rookie Jonathan Jones. We know that Logan Ryan's been redshirted for this preseason, so he's probably not going to play. So you have your top guys, Malcolm Butler, you have Justin Coleman, you have Cyrus Jones. I think that's pretty set in stone as your top four along with Logan Ryan. So I think we know what they're going to be. I mean, it will be fun to watch Cyrus Jones. He is that top overall pick for the team, but I'm not really too nervous about what he's going to be. But when you look down the depth spot, you're going to have your Jonathan Jones. You're going to have your Darryl Roberts. You have those players that, honestly, I think last year they both could have made the team. We know that Roberts got injured, so he wasn't able to participate. But he was a 7th-round pick. He was competing for time to actually line up with Malcolm Butler on that first-team defense. And he's been working on his special teams so he can earn that 5th spot and possibly wait out the free agency period for when Logan Ryan eventually departs. If he can bide his time, then he can remain with the Patriots. So I'm really curious to see how those two guys line up. They're kind of different players. Again, Jonathan Jones is like 5'9", but he has tremendous ball instincts. He's able to play all over the formation. The coaches really like him. Bill Belichick thought that he's great and acknowledges that he can contribute on special teams, which is what he has to do in order to make the team. And then you have Darryl Roberts, who's 6 foot, tremendously athletic. I think he runs like a 4.38 40, super fast, but he's your prototypical outside cornerback. And so I think that Jonathan Jones, he offers a little more flexibility, but you can't teach size. And so I wonder if that will be enough to get Darryl Roberts the spot on the roster.
Given all these cornerbacks you just mentioned and the ones you didn't mention, the fact there's so many guys in that positional grouping fighting for a roster spot, one thing you really can never do when you're looking at the preseason is look at offensive packages, offensive formations, defensive formations, and come to the conclusion, oh, the team's going to run this formation as their base coming into the 2016 season. Given the number of cornerbacks battling for a spot and the amount of guys looking for reps from the coaching staff, do you see a nickel package to start just to get more bodies on the field, a dime package to start just more bodies on the field? How do you see the Patriots adjusting defensively against the Saints?
That's interesting because we know Drew Brees loves to throw the ball a lot. They are a heavy passing attack in New Orleans. So I think that the Patriots would be in that nickel defense anyways to start the game. I do think that they'll want to give the trio of Butler, Cyrus Jones and Justin Coleman. They will probably want to give them a few drives together. But once they get beyond that, I think that there will be an opportunity for a lot of these defenders to get a chance to see the field and really prove their stuff, particularly probably in like the second quarter. I wouldn't be shocked if they got Malcolm Butler out of there as soon as possible. So I think that there's going to be a real opportunity for the other guys like Kervon LeBlanc and D'Angelo Bentley to really see time on the field. And then you also have all of the safeties that I didn't even mention. Actually, I didn't even mention EJ Biggers, who is another cornerback that was competing for time. So I think that there will be a really good opportunity for these players to showcase their ability and talent. I would not expect all of them to see like rotations on a per drive basis. I would expect that the coaching staff is like, all right, you three get the second quarter, you three get the third quarter, and you three get the fourth quarter. And then next week when we play the Bears, we're going to rotate it again. So, the people who saw the third string Garrett Grayson with the Saints will get to see second string Brian Hoyer with the Bears next week, just so you can kind of see how they play at different levels of talent. And that'll really give them a big, as Belichick loves to use the word mosaic, it'll give the Patriots a better picture and full image of what these players are and what they bring to the table.
All right, Rich, last question for you before we make our crucial and so important predictions for preseason week 1 of this game. I want you to give me one player we haven't talked about yet on either side of the ball that you might want to keep your eye on if you're more of a casual fan, haven't been paying too much attention this offseason. Got to keep an eye on that we haven't talked about that you're excited to see.
Ooh, that's a good one. We have not really talked about Devin Lucien. He's a wide receiver, 7th-round pick. Over the final 5 weeks, I want to say, of his college ball, he put up like 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, and he really came on strong. He was a transfer out of, I believe it was California, and he joined up, it might have been UCLA, it was one of those Cali schools, but he joined up with Arizona State. And he was battling a hamstring injury earlier on in the year, but he really adjusted. He learned the offense, really adopted the role, and was a complete dynamo over the the end of the year. And he's kind of been quiet a little bit. We haven't heard too much of him out of camp, but that's just because there's been a lot of talent. A lot of players have been standing out, whether it's Aaron Dobson or Chris Harper as of late or Malcolm Mitchell. You have all these players that have really been standing out. But I think that Devin Lucien has the ability. He's very, very polished route runner. He has extraordinarily strong hands. And I think that he will have the opportunity, whether it's with Jacoby Brissett at the end of the game, I think that he will have the opportunity to show that, hey, if he doesn't make it on this Patriots roster, some other team might think it's worth taking a chance on him.
I like that. That's a good pick. I'll go to the defensive side of the ball and do the third-round pick, Vincent Valentine out of Nebraska. Big boy, 6'4", 330, a lot of muscle. I'm loving the potential of the Patriots' interior line this year with Malcolm Brown, with Alan Branch, Valentine maybe seeing rotational reps. Trey Flowers and Geno Grissom can both play all over the line. So I really like the interior beef we have on that line. And I love to see what Vincent Valentine can bring to the table. I don't see much of him, honestly, doing a whole lot this season because of the depth along the position. But I think he is going to be a factor going forward, and I think this preseason will be a good chance for him to show how many bodies he can move and how much space he can open up for those linebackers that remain a huge question mark. So he's my guy.
Absolutely, that's a good pick. We didn't really talk about defensive tackles today, and they've added a lot of bodies there. Terrence Knighton, Marcus Kuhn, they brought back Joe Villano. So they got some talent there to line up with Malcolm Brown and Alan Branch. So I think that there is going to be a rotation at that spot. But, it's come to that time. Alec, what is your pick for tonight's game?
Well, technically, Rich, I will gladly give it, but since you, through to a technicality, won the season-long prediction battles last year, I will defer to you if you want to pick first, or I will gladly make the first prediction because I guess to the victor go the spoils.
All right. Again, just like with the KGH thing, I wanted to hear you say it. So,
damn it.
My guess for this week. It's going to be a close one. Last year, the Patriots won 26-24. Jimmy Garoppolo-driven offense. I don't know how this offense is going to compare. I would be surprised if it was an offensive shootout. I mean, it is preseason, so anything is possible. I don't know how seriously these players are going to be. I was just going to say, I think the Patriots are going to win. I always got to be the optimist, even in the preseason. So I'm going to predict a Patriots victory by the score of 28-23. I don't know if it's possible.
You know what? It's the preseason. Anything is possible.
Yeah, I'm practicing my picks too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a preseason for us too, Rich. We got to get ourselves back into in-game shape. I am nowhere near in-game shape. I'm having ribs for dinner tonight. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be just mashed potatoes and shame all over the living room. But for my prediction, I'm going to go a little lower scoring. I think they're going to do a lot more kind of check downs, a little more kind of easy high completion passes, get Jimmy Garoppolo used to that. Maybe the Saints will the opposite, go for some deep long bombs. I'm going with the Patriots too, but I'm going to go 16-9 New England because why the hell not?
Low scoring game. Well, I'm excited to watch it. I hope everyone remains healthy throughout this game. I don't think that the Patriots can sustain any more injuries, particularly on offense. They really need everyone to start getting healthy so they can adjust and learn the playbook. So, Alec, do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
I do. One more thing to say. Let's all remember the cardinal rule of the preseason, and that cardinal rule is this. If somebody on your team looks good, it 100% guarantees to translate into the regular season. However, if somebody on your team looks bad, don't worry about it. It's just the preseason. Doesn't matter in the slightest. Doesn't matter who it is. That's the rule we all have to follow tonight.
Oh, that's great. That's a great point. Let's leave with this one. Jimmy Garoppolo, if he looks good tonight, how soon does he join the Hall of Fame?
Well, obviously, they're going to trade Brady tomorrow if he looks good tonight. Brady's washed up. His legacy's tainted. He's an embarrassment to the league. And if Garoppolo comes in and lights it up tonight, they got to cut ship while they still can. Cut bait while they still can.
Yeah, preseason for those idioms, too.
All right, buddy. Enjoy the game. NFL Network, CBS local stations, 98.5 the Sports Hub. Anywhere else they can catch the game if they want to?
That's basically it. The Patriots have the rest of them. If you are out of New England, you can catch it. I believe that it's going to be on the NFL Network, so everyone can watch it. But if you are particularly in Alaska and Hawaii for some reason, you can watch it on your local television. Who knew?
You not only do you live in Hawaii, you get to watch the Patriots on a Thursday night. You're just living the dream out there. God damn it.
Thursday afternoon for them, so that's even better.
Sure, even better.
Everyone enjoy the game. We'll bring up a post-game podcast at some point. I will be hosting something on Facebook Live for everyone to enjoy. And so everyone, until next time, have a good one.